Picture this. You are trying to process a massive dataset in Python, and suddenly you just watch your system memory max out completely, and bam, your program crashes. If you've been there, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we're diving deep into how we can solve these dreaded Python memory crashes using lazy evaluation. Specifically, we'll be looking in detail at iterators, generators, and the exact code you need to make them work. Let's dive right in. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the core memory problem and iterables, look at the lazy approach, unlock the magic of the yield keyword, tackle handling massive data, and wrap up with some rules, limits, and a quick exercise. All right, section 1, the memory problem and iterables. Let's look at the absolute most common trap developers fall into when dealing with lots of data. So let's visualize how we process data. Over on the left, we've got standard iterables. We're talking about your everyday lists, tuples, and strings. They use what's called eager evaluation. Think of this literally like a massive water tank. If you have 1 million items, Python eagerly loads all 1 million of them into your computer's RAM at the exact same time. It's incredibly heavy. But on the right, we have the lazy evaluation approach, using iterators and generators. This is essentially a conveyor belt. It produces items one by one, just in time, exactly when you need them, keeping your memory completely free. Section 2, iterators and the lazy approach. Let's see exactly how we can build this conveyor belt in Python. Imagine starting with a standard iterable, right? Like a static list of numbers, 1, 2, 3. It's a heavy, solid block of data. But when we pass that list through Python's built-in iter function, think of it like that funnel in the middle, we convert it into an iterator. It magically becomes a mechanical dispenser. It absolutely will not hand you the whole list at once anymore. Instead, it just patiently waits for you to pull the lever to get the next item. Let's actually look at the code to make this happen, step by step. First up, we define our iterator object by wrapping a simple list, 1, 2, 3, right inside that iter function. Boom, we've just built the engine. Now, how do we crank it? Well, we use the next function. Look at it line by line. We call print next iterator object, and it outputs 1. We pull the lever again. It outputs 2. A third time, we get 3. But here is the absolutely critical part. If we pull the lever a fourth time, the engine is empty. Python raises a stop iteration error. Now, don't panic, it's not a crash. It's actually just Python's way of cleanly signaling that the stream is completely finished. Section 3, generators and the yield magic. Because, let's be real, creating iterators from scratch using those built-in functions can feel a bit clunky. Enter generators. So the fundamental difference here, and this is absolutely crucial, is how standard functions and generator functions deliver data. A standard function uses return. You know this one. When Python hits a return statement, the function terminates completely. It delivers a single final value, and all its local variables get totally wiped from memory. A generator, however, uses the yield keyword. When Python hits yield, it literally pauses execution and freezes the current state. It delivers a continuous stream of values over time, remembering exactly where it was for the next time you call it. Let's examine the anatomy of this in actual code. We've got a function here called simple generator function. Inside, it prints generating first value and then hits yield hello. Now look at the bottom line. Gen is equal to simple generator function. It looks exactly like we're executing a standard function, right? But we aren't. Calling a generator function does not run the code inside it. No way. It merely builds the generator engine and hands you back a generator object. It isn't until we actually call next gen that the function wakes up and starts running. And this brings us to the freeze frame concept. Think of it happening in 3 distinct stages. Stage 1, you call next gen, and the function wakes up, running normally until it hits that magic word yield. Stage 2, yield dispenses the value, let's say a number, and suddenly the function freezes into a solid block of ice. All local variables are locked perfectly in place. Stage 3, you call next gen again. The ice block melts, and execution resumes exactly on the line immediately below the previous yield, retaining full 100% memory of its prior state. It's brilliant. Section 4, handling massive data. Let's put this freeze frame magic to the ultimate test and look at some real-world code applications. I really want you to look at these two numbers, 112 bytes versus 85 megabytes. 112 bytes is roughly the size of a single short text message. 85 megabytes? That's a heavy, high-quality music album. This is the literal difference in memory consumption when calculating the squares of 10 million numbers in Python. Let's look at the code that creates this massive discrepancy. Okay, let's break down the code. On the top, we have square list n. We create an empty list called result, run a for loop 10 million times, and use .append I1, 2. Finally, we return the whole list. This eagerly calculates all 10 million items and stuffs them into RAM all at once. That's what bloats your memory to 85 megabytes. Now look at the bottom, square generator n. Notice what's missing? There's no empty list setup, there's no .append, and there's no return statement. We simply loop in yield I2. This lazy generator sits at just 112 bytes, whether n is 10 million or, honestly, 10 billion. Why? Because your RAM is only storing the algorithm and the current state. Zero bloat. You know what's crazy? You don't even need a full multi-line function definition to get this benefit. Look at how a tiny syntax change makes a massive difference. On the left, we have list comprehensions. They use square brackets to eagerly compute all items instantly. On the right, we have generator expressions. You just swap those square brackets out for standard parentheses. Instantly, you've converted a RAM-heavy operation into a lazy RAM-light pipeline that only computes when specifically requested. It's such a simple, elegant trick. Let's look at a super common scenario, reading a 10 gigabyte log file. If you use standard methods like .read, .splitlines, you are forcing Python to load a massive 10 gigabyte string directly into memory. Your system RAM will crack under the pressure, and for sure, your application is going to crash. So here is the elegant solution using a generator in code. We defined read log file path. Open the file, and then we use a really simple for-line in file loop. Now look closely at the if and yield lines. If error in line, yield line.strip. Because yield pauses the function, Python only loads a single line of that massive text file into memory at a time. It checks for error, yields it if it's true, and then immediately tosses the line from RAM. You can process a 10 gigabyte or literally a terabyte file while keeping your memory footprint near absolute zero. And hey, because memory isn't consumed up front, you can actually pair yield with an infinite while true loop. Now, normally in a standard function, an infinite loop is a deadly bug that's going to crash your machine. But in a generator, it creates a perfectly safe infinite data stream. It's absolutely ideal for things like time series data, reading continuous sensor streams, or generating endless unique IDs. Section 5. Rules, limits, and an exercise. Generators are incredibly powerful, no doubt about it. But they do come with a few strict rules you've got to understand to use them properly. First up is what I like to call the object trap. A really common mistake is setting fib equals Fibonacci 10 and then immediately typing print fib. But remember, generators are engines, they aren't containers. Printing them directly only reveals the engine object in memory, not the actual data it produces. You have to turn the crank. You extract the values either by running a for loop or by typecasting the entire generator into a list using the list function. Rule number 2 is the exhaustion rule. Generators are one-time use only. Think of it like a battery. Once you loop through the generator completely and hit that stop iteration error we talked about, it sits at 0% capacity. It is fundamentally empty. You cannot rewind a generator. To read that data again, you literally have to instantiate a brand new generator object from scratch. And this really brings us to the core trade-off here. Lists are eager. They use way more memory, but they execute faster for small-scale operations, and they allow you to rewind and perform specific index lookups like data 5. Generators, on the other hand, are lazy. They heavily optimize RAM at the cost of single-use traversal. But when it comes to massive datasets, file streaming, or memory-constrained environments, generators aren't just a nice option. They're pretty much your only choice. I want to leave you with this bit of code to really test your understanding. Take a look at this Fibonacci limit generator code. We've set fib equals Fibonacci 10 and tried to print fib, but we just got an object back. Why did that happen? Remember the object trap we just talked about? We built the engine, but we didn't turn the crank. So how would you fix it? Well, you'd simply wrap fib in a list cast, or you'd iterate over it with a for loop to actually pull those numbers out. Think about how you could implement this exact pattern in your next big data project to save your system's RAM. Until next time, keep exploring and keep building.